You ready? Pitch. Here we go. Sing like you mean it. Ready, and sing for joy.
2 years ago, if you'd told Christiana Quick Cleveland she'd be teaching a bunch of senior citizens,
Catherine, Velma, Carol, Judy,
most of whom can't even read music. Do you have a background in music or singing?
No, not at all.
This is my first time ever singing with a group of people.
She'd have never believed you.
please give me that note again.
There are a lot of challenges working with seniors.
Challenges is a vast understatement. One member, Don Smith, is legally blind.
I have a hearing problem, so I can't keep up my hearing aid loud on one side, or I hear too much else.
So what would push a veteran music teacher to take up such a challenge?
It's not so easy for musicians to make a livelihood, and this had a grant supporting it, and it paid well.
That grant is actually the culmination of several years of workshops where the Hart Senior Center and the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission found an interesting phenomenon.
First time unison, then in parts.
The arts, particularly music, exercised not only the body, but the brain.
We know that being creative as we age is a good way to keep healthy, keep our brains active, and so we've done a lot of programming in this arena, after some workshops that lasted for several years, we decided we really wanted to get into music.
Teaching those skills required finding a veteran teacher with patience and a whole lot of stamina. Someone like Christiana Quick Cleveland.
If you continue to exercise your mind, you can stay agile, flexible in your thinking, flexible in your movements of your body, then your retirement years may look very different from someone who is just very passive or looking at television, doesn't get out.
And as much energy as Christiana and her co-director Catherine Fagiolo expend, they know the choir is working just as hard, mentally and physically.
So everybody's on their last pitch.
No. Never sit idle. There's one thing, you don't sit idle for a minute, as you can see. Okay, you're always on the move.
I did not expect it to be drawn out so much and to feel as uplifted and to know that there was going to be a lot of work.
And an amazing thing happened for Christiana. As soon as she started working toward performances like their annual Christmas concert, she started to get back far more than she was giving.
Their spirit or their energy is, it's just has a very dynamic pull, much more so than other choirs. When they succeed, it's such a big thing.
In Sacramento, Dave Manoucheri, KCRA 3 News. It is the largest, possibly most complex piece of work of a singular artist, a soaring mural that the general public never gets to see.
I've been here since 1970, and it's held up pretty good until just the last few years.
Pretty good, especially if you know the history of this painting. It took Ralph DeBoe's Pecor at least 2 years, from 1938 through 1939, to create his own rendition of The Last Supper. He had little or no money and was even forced to dye his own paints.
The story also goes into he didn't have all the paints and he used coffee and different materials instead of just the paint and the paint colors.
The reason Pecor was broke is also the reason the public never gets to see his masterpiece. You see, his studio was here, inside Folsom Prison. Pecor wasn't just a painter, he was a prisoner, inmate 21692. But Pecor's Last Supper doesn't begin here. This story actually starts back in the 1920s. Pecor was the art director for the famed Fox Theater in Atlanta. He was an artist tasked with painting portraits for political campaigns, appearing in newspapers.
Come up and see me sometime.
In the 30s, he moved to Hollywood and became friends with actress Lillian Roth, a star of stage and screen. But that all changed in 1937. He was convicted of manslaughter, right?
I believe he was.
Ralph Pecor was convicted of killing a Missouri man, William Williamson, who wanted to be a cowboy actor. Pecor even drew his own illustration of the crime scene for the trial, claiming it was an accident that occurred while they were shooting at cans. The jury didn't buy it, and he was convicted of manslaughter, which is how he ended up in Folsom.
Traditionally, he did artwork around the valley and for the war effort.
Jim Brown is a former corrections officer and runs the Folsom Prison Museum. He says that by all accounts, Pecor was prolific. He painted these historical pieces for the prison dining hall, explorers planting flags on the newly found Americas.
He did, I believe it was 12 historic paintings on the wall, again, right on the plastered wall. Then he kind of did little phrases about them.
Pecor had a sense of humor, so while he was a serious artist, his captions read like a film noir, and they caught the eye of the newspapers.
But he kind of did it in a inmate jargon.
Painting number 2. England's Queen Elizabeth sent a seagoing hijacker named Sir Francis Drake to muscle in on the California score. Drake knocked over every Spanish ship he could find on the way, put up an English flag at Drake's Bay near Frisco, and made the touch stick. Derek Schoen, Associated Press writer.
Still, it was the 19th century Greystone Chapel at Folsom Prison that became Pecor's masterpiece. The sidewalls between stained glass windows were frescoes. On the walls above, every single Station of the Cross painted and framed. And the centerpiece, his mural of the Last Supper.
There's pictures of other painting murals in here that were in place of the windows.
Ever the sense of convict humor, Pecor supposedly used his fellow inmates as models.
The pictures of all the individuals in the Last Supper are supposed to be inmates who were doing time at the time of the painting.
The story is that Jesus is supposed to be Ralph Pecor, and I said, it don't look like anything like Ralph Pecor.
After he completed the Last Supper, Pecor worked as a propaganda artist for the U.S. government from inside Folsom Prison. He even allegedly painted watercolors for political campaigns for Governor Colbert Olson.
He painted for some of the big magazines, like Harper's Review and places like that.
Inside Folsom Prison today, few traces of Pecor remain, from the dining hall to the Greystone Chapel. All that remains are the hooks where the Stations of the Cross hung.
75 years ago, what was important and what was removed for whatever reasons, we just don't have the tracking. We didn't document it.
Today, Pecor's mural of the Last Supper is falling apart. Some of it is due to water seeping into the walls, some of it from age, and some because of the type of paint, most likely whatever was cheapest and easiest to get.
It was done on plaster and not sealed, and as moisture is drawn into the painting, it's peeling off the wall, and then so is the plaster.
We always thought it was painted right onto the granite wall, but when we had a gentleman come out to see about restoring it, he actually peeled the piece back on one of the edges, and he said, it looks like it's got like a wallpaper backing. It looks like somebody was smart enough to have put wallpaper on there. Maybe that would have been easier than the coarse granite.
Jim Brown and the Prison Museum hope to restore the Last Supper, a process that isn't cheap and it isn't easy. If it can be salvaged, it would cost around $250,000 using something called a strapo process.
We take it off the wall. We take it off in pieces. We transfer it onto a synthetic material that is flexible, it stretches, heat and cold don't bother it, and we redo the painting onto this synthetic material, and then we can hang it and frame it and put it back on the wall.
It is a piece of history, and generally we keep it covered most of the time so that it takes on as little more damage as possible.
Brown says the painting is as much a piece of the prison history as the granite Greystone Chapel is made from. As for Ralph Pecor, he just couldn't stay out of trouble or out of prison. He ended up doing at least 2 more stints.
Got out, and I think he went to New Mexico.
Before that, Ralph actually did time in Florida, getting the nickname Old Timer. It's where painting got him more newspaper attention, painting a semi-famous portrait of a smiling Jesus in demand throughout the country.
Came down with cancer, and the governor there released him just so he could die on the streets.
Ralph Pecor died 5 days after getting out of prison in New Mexico. His smiling Jesus portraits still hang in many churches. But that is nothing compared to his masterpiece, the Folsom Last Supper.
It's pretty well known. It would be a shame to let it just fall apart and be destroyed.
But without the funds to restore it, the Pecor Last Supper could eventually peel away and leave just another empty wall. In Folsom, Dave Manoucheri for Common Ground.
Please begin the roll call.
Ted Davis, Los Angeles.
Since 1976, when this campus first opened.
Andrew Stevens, Woodland, November 17th, 2005.
The CHP Academy has served as a rallying point for all CHP employees and their families.
It is a solemn ceremony held once a year honoring the fallen.
Eric Manny, Fort Tejon.
Cadets, officers, and families of California Highway Patrol officers killed in the line of duty gather here at the CHP Academy to give voice to the names on the brass plaques on this memorial fountain. This is the ceremony the public sees, performed once a year. But before they call out the 225 names carved into metal, there's another ceremony. One held in the same courtyard at the same fountain.
First time I participated in this ceremony, it was a little emotional for me.
2 steps forward, march,
A ceremony just as solemn.
Being out here, you actually get a chance to see firsthand the names on the plaques.
Cadets from the CHP Academy take time from their lunch to honor those same fallen officers by polishing their name plaques every Wednesday.
It brings life to the names.
Jessica Bonner is one of those cadets. She has just 5 weeks left in the academy, but she takes the lesson this ceremony drives home seriously.
It makes you remember the fragileness of life. It makes you remember how, short life can be, and to take life, to its fullest, live it to its fullest. It makes you remember those people on the fountain that paid the ultimate sacrifice for others.
This ceremony today brought that home to me with such a great impact that we're family.
Fallen officers like Walter Frago, killed 40 years ago with 3 other officers in Newhall. His wife, Nikki, attended the public ceremony for the first time this year.
You would think that it would not be quite so emotional after so many years, but Walt was my first love. We met in high school, my only love, and it still touches and hurts the heart. That just doesn't go away. Can I give you a hug?
You could see how it's touched her, this event, and that's what this is all about.
CHP Commander Joe Farrow echoed the sentiment of the cadets and officers alike, that no matter where you live, the Academy will always be home. And the names on the plaques, including the name of Walter Frago, should be honored and remembered, along with their families.
I knew their story like I've known her forever because when I was a cadet here, we all learned about what happened in Newhall.
And in stark contrast to the ceremony held just a day before, the ceremony held each week by the cadets is silent. It's a silence that Cadet Jessica Bonner says isn't just ceremony, it's a reminder.
When the fountain ceremony is going on, you realize that, in a couple weeks, it might be your last day. And so when you hear the silence, I think people, they take that break from the academy to realize that this job it's tough, but,
It's rewarding.
It's rewarding, yes.
One group polishes, and all the other cadets look on. Cadets like Theodore Ray, 5 weeks from graduating himself.
And see kind of what we're embarking on this career as a cadet, and get a feeling of being a part of this family.
2 steps backward.
After the cleaning is complete, a final inspection,
Present. On.
and a final honor.
Company!
Before they leave in the same stoic silence.
It makes you remember the fragileness of life. It brings life to the names. We put on our vests, we put on our boots, and you go out in the patrol vehicle. You never know what day could be your last day.